Gonna jump right into this. We have got lots of information to share with you all, and I've got the recording started here, or somebody took care of that. That may have been Jenny or Tori that helped out with that. Make sure we get this thing recorded. Um, and yeah, so welcome everybody. Hopefully you can see the screen now. Let me get into presentation mode. And we are, gosh, it's hard to believe we're already halfway through April. But here with our latest installment of our market realities update. We were all together back in February, and it's crazy. A lot has really happened over the last 60 days. So for those of you that are regular participants with our market realities updates, you know that a lot of times what we do is we spend some time looking at the statistics and comparing what's been going on this year to what's been going on last year, and just kind of giving you guys some talking points and some things to kind of bring you up to speed with what's been going on in the market. Well, this time Jenny and I decided that really because of the craziness of the market and everything you guys have been dealing with the last quarter, it really doesn't make a lot of sense to talk about what happened this time last year, because I mean that was so long ago. That was 12 months ago, and quite honestly, to try and compare this year to last year and how it might impact things moving forward, we felt like, you know what, we're just going to look back at the last 60 days and use it as a barometer, as a litmus test to kind of see what we think is going to happen, in the next 60 to 90 days. And so we're going to go over some market activity over the last 60 days. And really what we want to spend some time on is how you can use these statistics to demonstrate not only market expertise, but also have more insightful conversations with your current buyers and sellers. We're also going to touch base a little bit on how long we think this craziness is going to last. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about, are we setting ourselves up to repeat what happened back in 2007 and 2008? We don't think we are, and we're going to show you some reasons why. And then we'll finally finish up with just some hopefully practical things that you can put into application with regards to answer the question of should I take the listing and working with sellers, and then how can you best help your buyers? So we're going to run through all that. We're going to try and be respectful of your time and get it done in less than an hour and a half. I'd love to think we can get it done in about an hour and 15. But obviously, if you have questions and so forth, put those in the chat and we will try and get to those as quickly as we can. So before we jump into all this, Jenny, anything you'd like to just say to the group or share with the group before we get started?
No, let's do this. I'm ready.
All right, here we go.
They're so smart.
Well, why don't you walk us through this first slide that we're taking a look at, Jenny? And I said we weren't going to look back a year over year, but this is just kind of like to give everybody set the stage, an idea of what they're living and they're feeling right now.
Yeah, it's good to have a benchmark. So I'm glad that we have a couple of slides in here that are year over year. So if you look at starting on the left there, showing time monthly report obviously has gone way up, almost 50%. The purchase apps, and this is Mortgage Bankers Association. So all the numbers on this slide are national numbers, but they're pretty indicative of what's happening in our market as well. Purchase apps are up almost 40%. Because it's basically free money. I mean, why wouldn't they be, right? Pending deals, interestingly, down by less than 1%. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Existing home sales up 9%, new home sales up 8%. Again, this is national numbers. We'll dig a little deeper into ours specifically. Existing home inventory probably does not surprise you. But that is down 52%, and new home inventory down 4.6, which we think might have a little play in it because of the different reporting and such. But probably no surprise, but it's still a good point of benchmarking compared to what's happening right now.
Yep. So a lot can happen in a year's time, and this is kind of a little reflective snapshot of that. So let's take a look at our first chart here. And this is going to look a little different from what you maybe remember seeing in the past. In the past, we normally took a look at the number of closed units, how that compared to a period of time back 12 months ago, the number of price reductions, and so forth and so on. Well, we have so much happening right now in the market with properties selling above original list price that we decided to make that the focus of this particular chart that we're looking at. So what you have is each county listed, and then the number of units that actually closed in the last 60 days. And so this was the last 60 days, say 3 or 4 days ago, is how current this information is. I still think it's important to show you how many of those properties that closed had to experience a price reduction in order to attract an offer. So that's what you'll see in the second column there where it says price reduction. Third column from there is the percent of the total that had to reduce their price. In other words, 11.6% of the market in Cherokee of homes that sold, and this is across all price points. And these are only single family detached, so no condos, no townhomes, but still 11.6% of the market had to do a price reduction in order to go under contract. Then the next thing that might surprise you or may not surprise you, because you're living it, breathing it on a daily basis, is the number of homes that closed in the last 60 days that actually closed for a price above the original list price. So in this example, again, Cherokee County, there were 334 properties that closed for above original list price, which equaled to about 47.4% of the entire closed market. So some pretty staggering numbers as you continue to look down the rows, and we look at Cobb with the number of price reductions at 15%, but 48.2% of the market sold for above asking price. DeKalb 43.6%, Fulton 40.5%, and then Forsyth and Gwinnett kind of leading the way, both at 50.5% and 54.8% respectively. So again, some pretty crazy numbers if you think about it. You know, when we were kind of monitoring this end of last fall, we were looking at 20%, 25%, and it's just continued to go up further and further and further. So well, why don't you take this next slide, Jenny, because this is just kind of like digging in a little deeper into all of those percentages that we saw for the homes selling above asking price.
Absolutely. And before I do that, you mentioned that this is single family only, and I want to let those tuning in know who came to talk about or to hear about condos. We got you covered. That's coming a little bit later. And also, if your county is not specifically represented here, what you'll see is that generally, yes, there are some mild differences county to county, but generally speaking, all are performing at a similar pace. So if your specific county is not noted, you can certainly take this information and apply it as well, because like I said, there's very minor adjustments county to county. So what you're looking at here is the average amount when the sales price is above original list price. So you can see the average, if you look all the way down at the bottom, the averages, or you can check by those 6 different counties. And they are spread out by price point. So Todd did a great job when he was pulling the numbers to really cultivate, okay, if I'm trying to best prepare buyers and educate them, how much are you going to have to spend above list price if that's what it's going to take? Here it is broken down by price point. So really, really great numbers. You can see the average for under 500 is about 12,483. The average for 500 to a million, 500,000 to a million is right at 18,000. And then above a million is approximately 45K. And then each differential you'll see here by price point and by county.
Yeah. So again, to Jenny's point, I mean, if you want to get real particular by county, there are your numbers, but as a general rule of thumb, and we will kind of break it down on this next slide with our key takeaways. There are still sellers with original list prices that are overpriced and are having to do a price concession in order to attract buyers. So you probably are going into a lot of situations on listing appointments or talking with would-be sellers, and they're saying, I can pretty much price my home at any price and somebody will buy it. Well, that's we'd love to think that's true, but it's not necessarily the case. And we have the statistics that basically show that. But over half of the homes that have sold in the last 60 days in the 6 core county area did sell for above original list price. So that is something to kind of be thinking about, especially when you're working with buyers. And so buyers need to be made aware of the fact that there's a 50-50 chance that in order for their offer to win, they will have to pay above original list price. And again, you can use the previous slide to kind of give them a ballpark on what they can expect that to be. And then here are your averages: 12,500 for under 500, 18,000 if it's 500 to a million, and around 45,000 for a million and above. So talk to Jenny a little bit. We talked about it, and I know we're going to talk about buyers in a moment, but knowing that you're going to have that delta if they want to win the property, how should we be coaching our buyers when they start looking with us for properties?
Sure. I mean, it goes to reason that if they're going to have to spend, and it's good to mentally factor this in, right? For them, for you, et cetera. But if they're going to spend, let's say 400,000 is their highest limit on a home, that really means in today's market, 412,500. So that's a conversation that they should be having with their lender to make sure that's something they're comfortable with, that they can qualify for, so that there's no surprises. And obviously, depending on their different, if they're going to spend 600,000, then that's really 618,000. So adjusting the search parameters and also having those conversations with their lender in advance, so that when they do find something that they want to act on, everybody can act on it quickly and we're all in sync about what's going to happen.
Great points. Let's see. Just looking at the chat real quick before we move on, Jenny. I don't know if there was anything that showed up in there or not.
There's not any
not that I can tell.
Okay.
And no questions per se, but we were just saying that chart would be a great resource to share with your clients when you're getting ready to make offers.
Perfect. Yeah, monitor that chat for us, Tori, and feel free to chime in if you have any questions, so we make sure nothing gets overlooked. So next slide we have here is one that you have seen in the past, and it basically is showing you what is happening with regards to median sale prices. And again, we have the 6 core counties there, and this time around, we have had positive month-over-month changes in all counties. 2 months ago, that was not the case. We had a couple of counties where actually there was a slight dip. And I think that was as we were kind of coming out of December and so forth and so on. But every county right now is well ahead of where it was same time last month, and also significantly ahead of where it was same time last year. And something that really kind of caught my attention was how Forsyth County up there in Sherry's backyard, and our collection of Forsyth agents and Atlanta North agents, and even the North Fulton agents, 425,000 was the median sale price. It leads the 6 core counties right now, and that's a 9.2% increase month over month and a 16.6% increase over the year. But DeKalb still leads the way in terms of percent change year over year. They led the way in February, and again is the case in April with 19.5% year over year change, and that equals a 327,500 median sale price this year compared to 274,140 last year. So what does all of that mean? I mean, we've talked about it before. Sometimes the median sales price comparison, better to look at the median than the average. This percent change over here isn't always necessarily reflective of appreciation, but in this case, I think it's pretty doggone close, and we're going to show you why in a moment. And right now, Jenny, we're looking at just year over year by across the country, the existing home prices and what's been happening there.
Yeah, you take a look at this, and the Northeast is still Northeast and West are kind of duking it out for number one theoretically, and the existing home prices increasing Midwest and South, I mean, basically everywhere in the United States, it's a hot market. So no surprise. Frankly, I thought the South would be a little bit higher, but when you factor in all the areas in the South, it probably makes a lot of sense. Where we're seeing that growth is definitely here in Atlanta. So I'm sure that we'll share with you a little bit later our number specifically, and I would expect it to be higher than the Southern average.
Yeah, and that 15.8%, that might be a number you've heard, or something around 15%, because this is coming from NAR, and I know a lot of the national media outlets lately over the last couple of weeks. Luke alluded to this about a week or so ago. It just seems like real estate is all it's the hot topic in a lot of the news channels and media outlets, both on television and just online, and they're talking about double-digit appreciation, and that's where they're pulling this number from, is from this latest report on the existing home prices. Next slide here is just a percent change in the sales, and this is just the actual number of sales happening across these different price points. And so don't think that, you know, because you're seeing these red figures here in the homes under 250, that market has that the appetite or the demand for that market has declined. That's really not the case. All that's really showing you is that there's nothing in that price point to buy. So if there's nothing to buy, you're going to naturally see a decline there. And then what was really, really interesting is look at all of the really 500 and above, you know, 50% increase year over year in the 5 to 750, 66% to 750 and million, and 81% from million and above. And I know that we've been talking kind of, you know, offline, Jenny, how we really have seen that million plus market really picking up over the last couple of months. And again, this slide kind of gives proof to that.
Absolutely. I mean, those numbers and those increases, it shows to me consumer confidence, which is, I think, a very good position to be in, not just buyer demand, but overall consumer confidence. And here is the Case-Shiller 20 city composite. And later we'll show you Atlanta specifically, but basically this measures price changes. And you can see all the way on the right, there is significant growth in our price change. And if you look at the dashed yellow, that's kind of the benchmark. Obviously, we are way ahead of it. And I say we as in the 20 city composite, but it certainly rings true here in Atlanta.
Yeah, and this was a great quote that was recently came out from Dr. Lynn Fisher, the Deputy Director of FHFA's Research and Statistics. House prices nationwide recorded the largest annual and quarterly increase in the history of the FHFA Home Price Index. Low mortgage rates, pent-up demand for home buyers, from home buyers, and a limited housing supply have propelled every region of the country to experience faster growth in 2020 compared to a year ago, despite the pandemic. So again, something you're all feeling and that we all know, but we're certainly setting some pretty significant records. And then as Jenny mentioned a little bit ago, getting tongue-tied there, this is the Case-Shiller index for the Atlanta MSA. And you can kind of see as we go all the way back to 1990. We actually started tracking Atlanta in 2000, which is why you see this index over here onto the left of 100. That was the starting point when Atlanta started tracking in 2000. And then the roller coaster ride, of course, the peak here was in 2007, where we peaked out at 136.4, just to kind of give you a point of reference back during the heyday. And then, of course, we see the decline here during the recession and us bottoming out here in March of 2012 at 82.5%. We ended the index as of January, and this is a trailing lagging index. It's 2 months behind, which is why we're just looking at January right now. We will probably see this continue to go up significantly when we start seeing February and March numbers, but we hit 169.9. A year ago, we were at 155.1. So all that means, the way that you can kind of boil that down, is Atlanta saw appreciation over the last 12 months of 14.8%. And if you remember, we had 15.8 on a couple slides ago. And Jenny and I, we were talking earlier, and just for those of you that don't really understand or know exactly what the case-shiller is measuring, just so you do know, it simply is measuring any resale that occurred. It's not measuring what new homes sell for. So in other words, the property has to sell twice before it actually gets included as part of this index. And so, like, if it was a new construction home and it's sold for, say, $100,000, and then the person who bought that home turned around and sold it 2 years later, whatever that change was is what case-shiller measures. So it really is trying to appreciate, or to try to determine resale appreciation. So that's what you are seeing when you see these numbers here and they start quoting case-shiller, and that is true for all across the country. So run us through the key takeaways here, Jenny.
Absolutely. Month over month appreciation across the 6 core counties indicates prices are continuing to rise due to over half, yes, half of the sales in the last 60 days selling above original list price. Significant demand in the sales price year over year. DeKalb continues to lead the way, Forsyth not far behind. Result of these median increases is, as we talked about, a combination of price appreciation and selling more homes in the upper price ranges, and overall price increases in the new home market as well. We talked about case-shiller, and home prices in the Atlanta MSA have appreciated 14.8% in the last 12 months. Historically, we've had single digit, somewhere around the 6 to 8%, generally speaking. It's been higher in years of late, but 14.8 is certainly one of the highest in Atlanta in quite some time.
So the next thing we're going to take a look at, again, the table might look familiar, but the information contained herein is different. So just going to spend a bit of time here. I'm not going to go through every single county. We might touch on just some nuances, but for the most part, the counties, they're so similar to each other. It's kind of uncanny how similar they can be in the numbers. But as was before, the first 3 columns are basically showing you how many units closed for the period of time, which is the last 60 days, the number of price reductions. The third column, though, is a new addition. It's again showing the number of property that's sold above original list price. So in this case, 561 homes closed under 500,000 in Cherokee. There were 57 reductions, or 10% of the market. 280 closed for above original list price, which is basically 50% of the market. Then the columns to the right of that are going to give you what the average total days on market are. And so for the no LP reduction means that there was no list price reduction, or no reduction at all. For the total days on market for a list price when there was a reduction is basically these price reductions here and the number of days on market. So basically, if there was no price reduction, the average that the 561, not the 561, the 561 minus the 571 was basically 2 weeks. For those that had to do a price reduction, it was 73.3 days. The new column over here to the right, though, is of these homes here that sold for above list price, the 280 in this example, the average total days on market for those was 8.2 days, which is just insane. I mean,
that's crazy.
Basically a week. So then the same would be true for the 500 to $1 million, and then the $1 million plus. Now this is a little weird here because there was only one and it sold quickly for 3 days. So, but the numbers are the numbers, which is why that's 3 there. But again, as we go through this and we see the different counties, you're going to see this number 8.2 does not vary very much from county to county.
We're used to seeing those single digits. Sorry to interrupt. We're used
That's
to
okay.
single digits be months, not days.
Yes, for sure. 8.2 months instead of 8.2 days. I know, it's insane. So, and then the next slide is one that you are used to seeing, and it just summarizes what has the month supply been for the various price ranges. And we do a comparison of this year versus last year. So in this case, we have a 0.6 month supply right now of homes under 500,000 for Cherokee County in this example, A year ago, we were still a seller's market at 2.1. And then what the total days on market are for just the market in general, not including or excluding price reductions or whatever, just what's the total days on market. And so this year it's 28 days for the entire marketplace. A year ago it was 69. And again, you're going to see a big drop or difference as we go through the counties in all of these categories. You know, we went from a 5.6 month supply, one would argue a balanced market a year ago in Cherokee for 500 to a million, to a 1.3 month supply. And then the million, you know, plus a 40 month to a 7.5. So as we go through these, Jenny, if there's anything that you want to kind of point out or whatever, you know, feel free to jump in. But as we send the slides out, you can kind of look into your particular county and just kind of pull out the numbers. But I mean, these are some pretty crazy numbers to see, these total days on market, especially for the above list price numbers.
Yeah, it'll be interesting as you're looking through to see the million plus, because those at least are in the, you know, 3 digits. And it's just an interesting comparison to look at.
So DeKalb, for example, again, the 8.4 for the total days above list price. Big, you know, and even when there's not a selling above list price, it's still about, you know, 2 to 3 weeks max that these homes are on the market. And even the million plus, 3 weeks for some of these. So looking again here at DeKalb, total days, not really sure where that line came from, but 0.6 months, 0.9 months for 500 to a million, and so forth and so on. Here we have Fulton County, again, 8.3. It's basically 8 across the board when you look. 2 weeks, 2 days for the regular market. So again, just take a look at these numbers when the slides go out for your particular county. Just wanted to make sure you kind of understood what you were looking at. 51% of the market in Forsyth County under 500 selling for above list price. Total days on market 0.4, not even a half of a month now for Forsyth County, and not even a month for 500 to a million. And then we've got Gwinnett at 7.2 days, 14 days, or 13.1. And so again, it's kind of crazy how these trends just follow along each county, at least for the 6-4 county area of Atlanta. Again, Gwinnett, a 0.4 month supply for under 500,000. So run us through the key takeaways here.
Sure. I think one thing I'll add to this is, as rates, you know, the news of the rates decreasing and the expectation that they are going to remain low, we anticipate that that will continue to drive buyer demand. So it's obvious to say it's a seller's market across all price points, as evidenced by the numbers. Significant declines in total number of sales priced under 500K, lack of inventory, because that demand's been strong for a while. Homes going under contract at a sales price above original list price, under $1 million, are on the market for 10 days on average. That's the average, 10 days. And that'll probably change as we continue over the next couple of weeks. Under contract, under $1 million, are on the market for 2 to 3 weeks. If it hasn't gone under contract in 2 to 3 weeks, it is overpriced. And those are just stats to help arm you, so that when you're talking about a seller who really wants to push it, if you hit that 2 to 3 week mark and it's, you know, it's not happening, it's time to adjust, and maybe a significant adjustment. Homes requiring price reductions are typically seeing 3 to 4 times more total days on market than those that are priced correctly. So we got to know what their drivers are. But there is a question mark about if a home is on longer than, let's call it 4 weeks, and it's under $1 million, do people start to think, oh, what's wrong with that home? I know that sounds crazy, but that's a question to think about.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about when we, you know, get to the end here a little bit and talking about just working with sellers and, you know, having some of those conversations with them about what's going on in the market. So, all right, we're going to shift now. And yes,
you've got a question in the chat.
let's see. how much of reduced days on market is because loans are getting processed faster? I don't know that Clark necessarily has to do with the loans getting processed faster, because the total days on market just measure the total number of days when it goes from an active status to a pending under contract status. So probably, you know, the ability to process these things more quickly certainly is probably having an impact in terms of the total number of days it's taking to go from beginning to closing in the property switching hands. So but I think it's just the speed of the market and things just going under contract so quickly.
I just wonder though, Todd, if so many buyers going into contract offers today are coming in totally pre-qualified. Actually, they're approved, what's the right word I'm grasping for? I mean, they're already underwritten.
Oh yeah, for sure. And you know, that's one of the beauties of the PHM programs that we have with the Accelerate, where basically they're pre-approved, ready to go. All they need is a property address to put in the blank there, and they can close it real quickly. So it is a great point. All right, current inventory and pending sales analysis. So I'm going to apologize in advance. First, I need to change that to April update there on that slide. But I know that this is a lot of information on the page and a lot to try and digest. And Jenny and I are just going to focus on and highlight some of the things that we think are most relevant right now as it deals with current inventory and then the pending activity that's going on. And so what we're looking at right now is just all of the 6 core counties, all price points, and what has been going on. You know, you've got your at the top here, you've got your current month versus your previous month, which is showing March to February comparison, and then showing the same month from 1 year ago in the change, and then of course the quarter there. We're primarily going to focus though on the today's stats. So what's been going on in the first 2 weeks of April this year versus last year. And we'll also take a look at the same time period a year ago, March to March. But what's really interesting is look at the pending activity here for the 6 core county area. It's up 62.5% from where we were a year ago. Now, I get it. A year ago, we were all trying to figure out how we were going to manage safe showings, and we were all masking up and putting hand sanitizer in our cars and trying to figure out how we were going to go about showing property. So there was obviously a little bit of a decline in terms of the number of homes that went under contract. However, this is a really good sign that even though we have some inventory challenges, and I'll use challenges very loosely, if you look at here, if you can follow my mouse under March 21, we currently have 3,224 homes for sale in the 6 core counties, single family detached. A year ago, we had 10,441. So that's what's accounting for this big 69% decline in inventory. However, we can't put things under contract if we don't have things coming into inventory. So what's happening is we're selling things so quickly, they're literally coming on the market and we're putting them under contract before they have any time to become statistically tracked or meaningful in this information. So that's really kind of what I want you to kind of see and realize, that we are still setting sales records, not only as a company, but the market is going crazy. And so while we, yes, have inventory challenges, certainly not going to lie, the fact that we have such an increase in pending activity, both on a month over month and year over year basis, is very positive looking for us. Now, I will point out this too. If you look a couple rows down, want you to look at the absorption rate based on the pending sale activity. Of course, you can take a look at what it is for the closed sales. That's kind of like looking into the past though. But the pending sales activity, currently the market, and look what it has been doing the last several months. You know, if you look back in December, we were absorbing about 73% of the overall market on a monthly basis. Then in January, it went to 106.6. Then in February to 123.1. And you might recall when Jenny and I were here last month, and we were, or back in February, we were talking about, you know, to what extent are we really going to run out of homes? to sell. Well, right now the market is absorbing the inventory at a clip of 165% in essence. In other words, for every house that comes on the market, we're selling a house and 2/3, if you want to kind of put it into layman's terms. So, again, though, that's just showing you that there is inventory coming in, and we just need to keep it coming in, we being the entire marketplace, in order to keep things available to sell. So I know that's a lot to talk about, Jenny, but you want to add anything to that I haven't already covered?
You covered it fantastically well. I mean, it's a lot to absorb, pardon the pun. But if you probably talk to sellers right now, even the sellers who weren't thinking about selling are thinking about selling. They're like, wow, if I could really get X%, I would move. I would go here or there, or I'd live with family, or I'd, rent an apartment, or whatever the case may be. A lot of investors that I have talked to are saying, due to the moratorium, I want to sell because I can capitalize and lock in some gains. And then when, the market adjusts a bit, then I can re-enter the market. So I do think that we're going to continue to see inventory come on because it's too attractive to lock in gains, either for, individual sellers or for investor sellers. So, while the pace is rapid, I don't think we're going to run out of inventory. I just think that there's going to be some adjustments in the market that may throttle it for a period of time, albeit I think relatively brief. And I think that we're going to continue to see a brisk market.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit about new construction in a little bit, but new construction is going to be something that helps us kind of dig out of this hole just as soon as, we can get supply chain a little more quickly. And, right now the talking heads and prognosticators are thinking that we might get into a more balanced situation in terms of the number of new homes coming onto the market, getting more seasonally adjusted, maybe by the end of the fourth quarter, but we'll just have to wait and see. And then the other thing just to take a look at here is the months of inventory that you see here, either based on closed sales or pending sales. It kind of is an inverse relationship to your absorption rate. So when your absorption rate is going to be real high, it's going to have the effect of a really low month supply of inventory. And that's exactly what you see here. If you look across, a year ago, we were at a 2.4 month supply for the overall market. Today, we're at a 0.7 month supply. But if you look in C2, when we were at a 2.4 month supply, we had 38.4% absorption, right? But as that absorption has gotten higher, look at the impact that it's had on the month supply. And now we're at this massive number of 164.8 in a 0.6 month supply based on that absorption. So the two work hand in hand together. So as one goes higher, the other goes lower, and vice versa. So again, lots of great information on these tables. And if you have the opportunity, I encourage you to go into Trend Graphics and TrendSend that you have access to grab these numbers pretty quickly. And then what we've done is we've broken it down for you again based on price. We have less than 500,000 for all the 6 core county area. You got a 0.5 month supply, 222.4% absorption rate. So we're absorbing twice the number of homes that come on the market at any point in time. However, look at the pending for the first 2 weeks of April, up 42.4%. We put 1,880 homes under contract as a real estate community from 1,320 a year ago. As we look forward to the 500 to a million, same trends. I mean, we're at a 0.9 month supply based, or a 0.8 on pending sales, the absorption at 133. But again, 183% increase in the number of homes we put under contract just in the first 2 weeks of April this year. 555 homes priced 500 to a million versus just 196 a year ago. And then Jenny, why don't you point out the million plus here?
Absolutely. The pending's 361%. I don't think I've ever seen a number quite like that. It's incredible. And then our solds are up 63.4%. And again, this is across all of 6 core county areas. So needless to say, the demand is there in all price points. And we're seeing a lot of movement in that upper price point, especially.
Yep, yep. And Clark, you made a great, you know, the in the chat there, the market is just burning off all the inventory, and the only thing left to sell is what goes on the market today. That pretty much is it. And we're going to talk about a nice little visual, a way to think about it too, as you're again talking with buyers and sellers in a moment. So here is again a little graph to kind of show you what's been going on year over year in the change in the number of listings. So the orange line here, the total listings, this is going back to last May and kind of where we were and dropping down. And now for the country and as a whole, we're down 52%. But the positive thing is, look at, you know, this was where we hit the pandemic and we dropped down and we bottomed out, but now we're kind of slowly kind of coming out, and we're almost getting to the point where we're you know, not below 0% here. So again, a positive sign to see that we've got inventory coming on to the market. I know this looks like a big map of red, Jenny, but what does it mean?
It's definitely a heat map, and it means that buying homes is hot. Unfortunately, what it shows is the degree to which the inventory has changed. So you can see the darkest red, cranberry color, is basically inventory that has decreased by 60% or more compared to last year. And then in varying degrees, less red to blue indicates, you know, where it is increasing. And believe it or not, the only increase is in New York, which is bizarre. But you could see in the South, lots of run on inventory. So all the headlines that we talked about for the last several months about where people are moving from and where they're going to is certainly indicated here on the map. Still, people are leaving Washington, California, moving to Texas, Arizona, people leaving the Northeast and coming to the South. And that's all indicated here. And overall, the United States is down 52% in inventory. Even Alaska, can you imagine that? The igloos are flying off the shelves over there.
Yeah. And again, I think this is why it's getting such national headlines and becoming such national news, is it's just not specific to even a region of the country. It is all across the country, the inventory situation right now. Kind of alluded to this last Thursday at the Success Circle event for those of you that were there. But, you know, part of the reason why we're in this inventory challenge to begin with is because the builders never really rebounded or caught back up from the post-recession years. And that's what you're looking at here in this graph. The dotted white line across the middle there is just the average annual units completed based on the last 50 years. And you can kind of see, you know, there were some years in the 70s we were up, and then some that were down and up and down and up and down. Of course, you have the heyday here in the red, back building up to the big drop off. And then you kind of see we just plummeted post-recession. And, you know, we know that some of that was because, at least locally, the local builders couldn't get financing, and the big builders were just basically in the process of gobbling up dirt, which they did for a good number of years before they really started to build. But now here we are starting to try and come out of this deep trough that we are in, just to get back to what the average has been over the last 50 years. And so we know that we're close to getting there. I would say, though, that for Metro Atlanta, we're still a couple years away before we get above this dotted line in terms of the units completed on an annual basis. But it's part of the reason why we're in this inventory challenge now, is because the builders just haven't been keeping up with the demand of the market. And that has to do with population increases, migration, people moving to the States, families, you know, getting larger and larger, and so forth and so on. So
there's an interesting question that came in through the chat. Are builders being constrained by environmental requirements imposed by local governments? I think there's a lot of things happening. I think the biggest constraint for builders is materials, price of materials for sure. But I think that there is sort of a balancing act going on as it relates to requirements. And the requirements are, there's nationally a interest in more affordable housing, and for good reason. But I think that in order to have more affordable housing, there has to be overall more housing. And in order to balance that, there's a lot of things at play. You have to give people a reason to make money in order to want to do those things. So it's quite the tightrope that is happening right now. But I think generally across the nation, people recognize that there's a need for more housing, and that encouraging developers to build is still going to do that, but yet being as responsible as possible and as thoughtful as possible along the way.
Yep. And along those lines, I just read something from Zelman and Associates, and we'll talk about some of this stuff in here. It's not in these particular screens that we're going to take a look at, but talking about the percentage of builders who are still really looking to build in more of the suburban markets versus the urban core. And it's not for the reason that you would think, though. It has it's not because of people being afraid to move back into the cities. It has everything to do with the cost of dirt as you get closer in proximity to the city centers. And so in order to maintain that affordability, along with the supply chain issues and the cost of lumber and the cost of labor driving up home prices, they're trying to manage that by going to areas of cities and states where the cost of buying the land is cheaper in order to kind of keep some affordability there. But Zelman and Associates is a group. They're a research group. We subscribe to them. Jenny and I and the leadership team do. And this is just some interesting stuff that came out from their March home building survey. And they have relationships with all of the home builders, both the national builders and the local builders. And so these are just some of the things that came out of this report that just came out this week. And it says, although many of our contacts know that the current demand environment is as strong as they've ever seen, seasonally adjusted orders fell sharply again in March as builders increasingly limited the sales across nearly all markets. And that's why I have that there. We talked about a little bit about this last Thursday at the Success Circle event, but builders are basically holding back the inventory that they have for a couple of reasons. And I think it's, again, to manage some of that supply chain and the labor costs and just to keep up with demand. But that's why those numbers fell sharply in March, not because of the demand itself, but they're artificially controlling how many units they trickle out into the market. And it says, while housing start activity did ramp higher in the month, which is a necessary first step to eventually easing back on these sales limitations, there's a big hill to climb, in our opinion, before the industry catches up. And we talked about that a little bit ago. And then given these caps on sales, home price appreciation continues to surge to new highs alongside accelerating cost pressures. It remains to be seen whether this pricing power can be sustained alongside higher rates and eventual increase in community count across the industry later this year and in 2022. So, and then some key takeaways from the March survey. Demand is at the highest level since 2006. We already talked about how the orders have fallen, and 54% of the communities are limiting their sales. Seasonally adjusted orders at the lowest level since last April. Starts growth are 53%, strongest of the cycle. 10th straight month of double-digit annualized price increases. That's a function of them, again, trying to keep up with the cost of the materials. I read somewhere too, because of the downturn and the recession and even the pandemic, a lot of these tradespeople, they're not there. They're not out there to be had anymore, and they've gotten into other industry and that kind of thing. So trying to find framers and plumbers and electricians and skilled tradespeople, it's more and more increasingly difficult for these builders, which drives up the labor costs. And then, of course, we have affordability concerns that edged higher, and then the new peak in annualized cost inflation of 10%. And I know that you wanted to talk specifically, Jenny, on this last one in terms of the key, the volume takeaways and so forth and so on, and the out-of-state buyers specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about how the market is growing and orders fell versus a 20% average rise over the month of March. So that was kind of interesting. 2 years in the survey history, when March orders fell, 2021 and 2020. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Out-of-state buyers currently represent an estimated 29% of buyer contracts, up from 15 to 20%. It should be up, but it's up pre-COVID. So you would think, well, that number is just because people weren't moving last year. This is based on pre-COVID numbers. So to me, it indicates that there's a lot of demand, which is what we've been seeing and what we've been sharing about people coming to Atlanta, and a lot of movement throughout the United States. And then 71% of all contacts are intentionally slowing sales, which we talked about, and limiting sales significantly. So that is very interesting about the movement. And I think it speaks to what Todd was saying about different, the affordability of lots and land, that when there are more work from home opportunities, as there are right now and anticipated in the future as well, that people will navigate or adopt areas where they may not have considered just because of affordability.
Yeah, and you and I were talking earlier, Jenny, and Paul Boomza last week mentioned that a lot of the buyers were coming from out of state to the different markets. That's what they're seeing. And so he asked the question of, do you think your potential buyer is maybe coming from out of state? And, just kind of talking about how that ties into the great relationship we have with Leading RE and Karen and her team and all the great work that they do in terms of, Atlanta is a destination city for businesses and for people to migrate to. And the fact that 30% of the builders are seeing that 30% of their buyers are from out of state reflects that as well.
Yeah, it's another great differentiation for us with our sellers. And it was great that he mentioned that. I appreciate you noting that, definitely.
So, and we had a couple questions in the chat here, and we all get to, there was one about interest rates and what's going on there. We're going to get to that in a moment in terms of what's going on with interest rates. And, if you saw the buzz today, for the first time in 7 months, or 7 weeks rather, interest rates were climbing up. Last week, they actually dropped a little bit. So that was a positive sign, but certainly does have to do with affordability, the impact on affordability, because just a few little inches in the interest rate do impact what that monthly house payment might be. And then I will share this as we're talking about new construction. Was having a conversation with Madeline Sater last week, and she was sharing her experiences with builders and new construction. And we were talking about them holding back lots and getting to the point now where you're on a list. They let you know when they're going to release a specific lot or a house. And then you kind of show up and it's like a lottery in terms of trying to get to the front of the line there to get into the offer. And then also, she's also seeing now builders doing highest and best in these situations too, which just kind of like blows my mind considering where we were not too long ago, where they were begging us to come into their community. So new construction though is a lot where it's going to happen. And so like we said before, brush up on your new construction contracts and know how to work in those new construction communities moving forward. So pending home sales year over year, again, the South outperforms the rest of the country. We're actually 2.9%, followed by the West at 1.9. I think a lot of that has to do with just, how nice the weather has been here in the South. We didn't have a major snowstorm, at least here in Atlanta this year. I know that we had some issues out in Texas and some other places, but I think just the seasonality of our springs is what's kind of causing some of these pending home sales to tick up, and for the fact too that we were an essential service, have always been considered an essential service and haven't been shut down like other markets have been. So this next visual, and actually Clark kind of alluded to it, but if you're thinking about what's the dynamic, what's been going on with inventory and pending sales, think about it in terms of like a drop in the bucket. Let's say you've got a faucet and you're kind of dropping water into the bucket, but let's assume for the moment that your bucket has a hole in it, and that hole is the buyers. So the amount that the drip goes into the bucket to fill the bucket up with water, if there's no hole, then you have lots of supply, right? And so you have no buyers coming in and taking that. But right now, the hole in the bottom of our bucket, which is all these buyers in the marketplace, is draining the water out faster than it can get dripped in. So there's still inventory getting dripped into the bucket.
Okay, Todd's on pause.
Inventory situation.
Oh, there, he's back.
So,
For a minute,
oh, you lost me?
but you're back.
Okay. All right. So let's take a look at the condo analysis, Jenny.
Yes, so areas 21, 23, and 24, we talked about this for sure, and wanted to make sure that we carved out some time to look at that. So obviously, the number of condos for sale has gone down, but ever so slightly. Importantly to notice is what we were talking about before, which is a lead measure of the pendings. So 68 for this year compared to 18 last year, so up 277%. And we think that's indicative of just lack of inventory, generally speaking, in the market, and also people getting priced out of maybe single family homes. So they're considering other options that maybe before they weren't considering, or maybe they're able to consider because they don't want to rent anymore. So either option, the market is looking very strong. And you can see for the number of new listings, well, in areas 23 and 24, you can see the same thing holds true for pendings, up 210%, and solds increased 25.6%. If you look at the new listings, just if you can, put on your super magnification goggles with me for a second, you can see there 228 in January of last year were new listings, and where we are right now is 301. So this is while it's hot, definitely, it still indicates that there is inventory available, and maybe even more than sort of your average bear, if you think of it compared to single family homes.
Yeah, and in 23 and 24, if you think about it too, remember what we were looking at in terms of the absorption rate for pending sales. 60.7% versus where we were in the 160s, 170s, and 200s. So still, though, great sign that the condo townhome market has come back. All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so we got other trends and info to cover next. The first one we wanted to share was just the average number of offers received, and this is a national number coming from NAR. They do a survey every month, and so we'll get March's numbers here shortly. But based in February, based on what they were seeing, the average number of offers coming in was 4.1. And we've kind of taken a straw poll, but I'd love for everybody to put into the chat, like over the last 45 days or so, how many offers are they having to write, when they're working with their buyers? Because we're thinking the trend is more like 6 to 8 in our marketplace right now, but would love to just kind of see what everybody else is experiencing. So that's what's happening on the national level. We talked about mortgage rates. Jenny, why don't you talk about what we're seeing here? And somebody alluded to, mortgage rates.
Yeah, so I don't know what happened to him, but I'll tell you what, let me bring up the presentation here. And while we're doing that, mortgage rates, free money. Anybody want some free money? I think we all do. No surprise there. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll get caught up here. Share, and there. All right, so Tori, can you see that? All right, fantastic. Let's see here. Let me move that thing. All right, good stuff. So crazy. I mean, 3.18%. Based on what we're hearing from Powell, it's going to be low for a while. So that bodes well for us. But it also means we're going to be, sort of grappling with multiple offers for a while. And you can see here some of the projections of Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, Mortgage Bankers Association, NAR, and the average of those. But I mean, you think about 3.05 in the second quarter of this year, and you fast forward to the first quarter of 2022. I mean, 3.32, that's insane. There's people on here that have seen, 14%, 16%. 7 or 8% was kind of the norm in, the early 2000s. So to consider the buying power that exists with these rates, there's a lot more people that can participate in the market. Obviously, if we continue to have double-digit appreciation on a year-over-year basis, that may not continue to hold. But these are certainly interesting times to allow more buyers into the market. Let's see, is this like last time? So a lot of you might be wondering, okay, are we setting ourselves up for a bubble, or what's happening here? And you can see there's some differences. And we've been talking about these on past market realities, but it's always nice to hear that. It's even better to see the data behind it. So what you can look at is if you compare 2002 to 2005, it's a 10.3 average annual appreciation. And if you're looking at 17 to 20, it's about 6.3. So definitely not a crazy number increase in the market dynamics of those times. And this is, I think, the biggest differentiator of all. Back during that time, there were a lot of loans. I won't say a lot. There were a portion of loans that were really overextending buyers significantly. And the nuance of that period of time versus this period of time is the amount of equity that people have in their homes. And if you compared all four of these quadrants or data points in the market that we're experiencing right now versus that market that really set up a significant fall, there is a big discrepancy, and a good discrepancy, because what we're seeing is 26,300 is the average gain in equity of mortgage homes, and 204,000 is the average equity right now. So I was amazed by this number. 38.2 are owned free and clear. So just a lot of interesting stats that show that there's more security, there's more room to maneuver within the current market dynamics. Todd, you're back.
I am. I don't know what happened. Gotta love technology though, right?
All good. We're glad you're back. So if you can see here the months of inventory existing, again, if you're looking at a comparison point of view, it's very, very different. In that market, less equity, less buyer interest. In our current market, greater equity, greater savings. The savings during the pandemic was at the highest rate in multiple decades in the United States. And then also, certainly that buyer demand is there. All right, you want to talk about this one?
Sure. So
here.
Yeah, just going back again too to where we don't think this is like the last time. What you're looking at, all that red was, if you remember, there was all sorts of crazy loan products that were available back in the day. 125%. You can borrow against your property and so forth and so on. Plus, the qualifications to get a mortgage weren't as stringent as they are today. And this is just kind of showing you where we were and what it looked like and kind of where we are now in present day in 2020 and the borrower risk associated. So, we're just in a completely different situation than we were 12, 13 years ago when we had the big mortgage meltdown and recession. And you hear a lot about forbearances and what's going to happen with the forbearances that we have out in the market right now. And this is straight from the Mortgage Bankers Association as of April 4th, so not even but a couple weeks old, kind of showing you where things stand with the various people in forbearances, almost half of them are already paid in full and they're out of the forbearance situation. Of the remaining 36%, more or less, have worked out a repayment plan, either in the form of a loan modification or a loan deferral, to where the balance, whatever they didn't pay for that period of time, will get tacked on to their mortgage as the balance at the end. And so when they get ready to pay it off, that balance will just be put back on there. So we only have about 16.1% that are still in trouble or still don't know what's going to happen with them. Of those, 1.7 are in some kind of repayment plan, a short sale, or deed in lieu. But because of the massive equity that everybody has, we just don't see a huge number of foreclosures flooding the market. We still have people, the forbearance plan program has probably still got another 90 to 120 days before it fully expires, and we'll kind of maybe get a better idea of what might happen with some of that. But right now, we're not seeing it to where we're going to have a bunch of inventory coming on the market in the form of foreclosures.
You can see here the percentage of distressed property sales is less than 1% of sales. That's obviously very, very strong and bodes well, again, for the market dynamics that are in place right now, comparatively. All right, Todd and Tori, let's talk about working with today's sellers. What's going on out there right now?
Yeah, we're going to shift now and just kind of have some conversations about what some practical things are that you can be doing when it comes to working with today's sellers. And Tori, feel free to chime in here. You know, the beauty of having you in your new role is you're still fresh from working with buyers and sellers, and I think still are kind of tidying up some of your own business. So you're still in the marketplace and have a real good point of reference for this. But the first question is when to take the listing and when not to. And, you know, in the past, we may have said something like, if the seller is just completely off their rocker and wants a price that is just completely unrealistic, you might want to consider passing. Right now, we're going to say, take the listing. It really doesn't matter what the seller wants to put the house on the market for. Take the listing, use the information that we shared earlier in terms of, you know, if you haven't gone under contract in 8 days, then you're probably not going to go selling for a price over your original list price. And if you're on the market for more than 2 to 3 weeks, the reality is you're probably not going to get an offer based on what your current list price is. And that way, it's not you telling them that, it's the market telling them that. And you can just use these statistics as your talking points for you. So, but I would say that take the listing, and because the reality is that it's probably not going to be with you very long. And it's okay if the buyer, if the seller wants to test the market and needs a little time to go find the next property they're going to move into. So, you know, again, each situation is unique and different. You need to have a conversation with your seller, understand what their motivations are and the reasons for selling. And then after you've had those conversations and kind of explain what's going on in the market, then you can kind of make a decision from there. But Tori, talk to a little bit about just, you know, we have what's the reputational risk there, and we're kind of directing that more towards when somebody might be a little overzealous in their belief in what their home is currently worth.
Right. So I think what we're really talking about there is your reputation on your sign being in the yard, being, you know, known as an agent that overprices or isn't really in tune with the market. I think that's what you're thinking about when you're talking about the reputational risk of overpricing. Another thing we chatted about was the reputational risk of the condition of the property. I mean, I've been in some homes past several months that I think sellers don't think they have to do anything anymore. And likely they're still getting offers. But think about your reputation as an agent, because other agents are going in the house, neighbors are going in the house, and you want your marketing, your market prep to shine. So when the neighbor's ready to sell their house, they think about you and go to you for your expertise.
Absolutely. And two, you know, you don't want your yard sign sitting out there for months on end when everybody else's house is going under contract in a matter of days.
Right.
That indirect perception of the neighbors in terms of, I wonder if Tori really knows what she's doing over there.
Right.
Everything else
What
is
is she
selling so
not doing?
quickly. Yeah. So under what conditions, you know, are again some things that you need to be thinking about, and again, going in with that maybe commitment from the seller up front that, look, okay, we'll put it on at this price, but if we haven't gotten an offer in say 3 weeks, then you need to agree with me right up front right now that we're going to reduce it to this, where I think we're going to be more in alignment with what the market's willing to pay. So just be thinking about that as well.
Right.
Any things they need to absolutely do, Tori?
Well, I think that it's just really important to educate the sellers on the market, give them all of the facts that we've talked about, and have a game plan for how you're going to handle offers, if you're going to close showings after a certain amount of days. Send your sellers away to a hotel. I mean, I know that we spend money on marketing, we spend money on staging. So if your seller is apprehensive about going out of town, put them up at Avalon for a night. Some of you guys may laugh at me, but I would totally have done that if it meant getting them out and making them feel comfortable at having people in and out of their house all day.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've got, it was mentioned earlier that my brother-in-law's parents are selling a house down in Noonan, and give a little shout out to Dory Love down there, is helping us with their listing. And she basically told them, you need to go find somewhere to go for the weekend, because we're going to have people coming in and out of here all weekend, and versus you having to come and go and so forth and so on, it's just better to go away. I'll handle everything, and then when you come back, we'll take a look at all the offers that are coming in. So that's just one way to, kind of manage the expectations. Also, too, probably not a bad idea, going back to reputational risk. If you know that you're going to be holding the house open for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever the case may be, to allow the showings to occur, let the neighbors know. Give the neighbors a heads up. Maybe it's even as something simple as the immediate neighbors go knock on the door and say, hey, look, we're getting ready to put the house on the market. It's going to be a little nutso around here. But there again, too, you're showing that you're kind of taking the extra step to manage what that process is most likely going to look like. Let's see, Mary Beth, important to have someone make sure the home is closed up and in good.
Yes.
Yep,
I was
absolutely.
going to say that. And I've heard of agents just staying, checking in periodically throughout the day when they know they're going to have several showings. Make sure the doors don't get left open, that people don't leave the little, booties laying around the house, refill the hand sanitizer, all that type of thing. So I went to a house and the door was completely open. So I think it's very important to check on that.
Absolutely.
I'd love
And
for you two to talk about the differentiation of agents in working with appraisers, because even though there's a lot of offers where that's not part of the offer anymore, it's still important and appraisals do still happen. So talk about that if you don't mind.
Tori?
First, me. So I was not on the appraisal class this morning, but I heard it was great. And I know that one key takeaway was to always try to meet the appraiser in person. I mean, I think they even suggested taking the lockbox off the door when you go under contract. So you have to meet them. They can't access it themselves. And always have the appraisal package with you where you're giving the story of the transaction. I mean, if there were 8 offers, tell them about the 8 offers. If you already have a backup in place, that there's no appraisal contingency, things like that, they're going to show the interest. And then also a list of updates and renovations. All of the comps that you use to price the home are very important also.
Awesome. Good stuff. How about buyers? What's going on with them?
Well, I think the first thing is to just set the stage. Obviously they probably know that the market is just crazy and on fire right now. But the best thing that you can start doing is giving them the heads up. Look, based on what we've seen over the last 60 to 90 days, half the homes out in the marketplace are selling for above asking price, and having a conversation about what their upper limit is, and then giving them an idea of kind of what on average people are paying when they get into a multiple offer situation, or what it's going to take to win the bidding war, and all of the things associated with that would be, the first step, in my opinion, is just kind of setting the stage for what the market looks like. And then from there, managing the emotions, when they get into those bidding wars and they get caught up in the frenzy of it, reminding them of what their upper limit was, and then, counseling them on the risk associated with not doing an appraisal contingency or not making it contingent on the appraisal or financing and things of that nature. So, Tori, you can speak a heck of a lot better to it than I can, because I know you've been working with buyers in this market right now.
Right. I mean, there's a lot they can do to make their offer stand out. Unfortunately, a lot of other people are doing these things as well. So I had an experience recently where my buyers were making an offer that was contingent on their house selling, and they live in California. And I told them that, the listing agent may want to reach out to their listing agent just to confirm that what I'm saying is true about the contingencies being removed, et cetera. And their agent took it a step further. The listing agent wrote a really nice letter highlighting the transaction and pointing out that all the contingencies were removed. And I thought that was a great, piece of information to give to the listing agent. She appreciated it. I think another thing is, we sell our buyers, we call these listing agents, having the conversation on the phone versus sending an email or a text. We always, I think always talking on the phone is better. But when you're selling the agent, also sell yourself and Harry Norman. At Success Circle, Emily and I were talking to a couple of agents, and they were saying that they had both won deals lately. And the listing agents said, you calling, telling me how you work, the value of Harry Norman, them knowing that they were Harry Norman agents and that the transaction would go well. I mean, obviously it's the seller's decision, but the agent being able to say, I've worked with Harry Norman agents before, they know what they're doing, I feel confident it will get to the closing table. They both said that really helped achieve the winning offer.
Absolutely. And again, we kind of talked about during the town hall, that's all, folks, almost. These special stipulations, things like, buyer potentially paying for the commissions, or, allowing the seller to stay in the property for up to 60 days rent free, maybe so they can go find the new property that they're going into. We talked about, with that, Jenny and Tori, when we were earlier, that make sure that you are telling them to get with their insurance people, if it's the seller, to confirm, that they've got coverage on their personal belongings in there. So just lots of different things to consider. I know Tori has got lots of classes planned coming up to talk more and more about this, but so it's a crazy market out there, and your brokers are aware, and they're there for you as a resource to help you, and anything that we can do, we want to do. So it was a lot of information this time around. Any questions about any of it?
Well, while we're looking for any questions, I just want to say a huge thanks again, Todd, for doing this research and putting the presentation together. It equips us to be the best in the marketplace. And thank you all for joining in and being the best and brightest and champions of real estate. That's what you are.
Champions for sure, for sure, for sure. Let's see. Was unable to take the appraisal class. Will there be another one offered, Tori?
If we have the interest, we will definitely look into getting one on the books. I think there were some requests for Emily, you were on the call. Was it?
Yeah, so they're actually gonna get us over the recording, and then they've also made both of the PowerPoints available. So there's a PowerPoint provided by B.S. Murphy, and then Prosperity as well. So cut over to Terry and Tori to distribute to everybody. But it was really a really good class, and kind of made you think of how important the appraiser is, regardless of which party you're representing in the transaction. So I think there would be some great takeaways for everybody.
Perfect.
Fantastic.
Gita says, when is this madness going to end?
I think it's going to end when we get more inventory on the market. I don't see the demand slowing down anytime soon. So I think it's going to be a function of getting more inventory onto the market to try and slow things down a little bit. Any other opinion on that, Jenny or Tori, or anybody
No,
else
I
for that
was just,
matter?
I'm kind of smiling to myself because I think, madness, every market has madness. It shifts from, what it is today to something in the future. And our best play is to be as prepared and as honest and consultative and value add as possible. And that's exactly what you're doing by investing your time here. So we'll just skip to the next mad market. I mean, that's kind of what I think about, and we're best prepared to handle any of those challenges.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, Dion's comment in the chat there about the first time home buyer deciding to wait so they could get more money. While we hate the fact that, that isn't going to be an immediate sale, sometimes that's what it means to be a consultant, right? To be a trusted advisor is to say, maybe you do need to wait a little bit until the fundamentals or the dynamics are a little more in your favor, because in a lot of cases, the dynamics and fundamentals aren't in a buyer's favor right now. Obviously people need to buy a home when they have nowhere to live, but to be able to do that and have that conversation, good for you. They're going to come back and use you for sure. And that's what it's all about in terms of being a trusted advisor and somebody who's an advocate and in their corner, not just looking for the transaction, not being transactionally focused, but being relationally focused. And that's what all of you are here on this webinar today.
Well, with that, just want to wrap up and say thank you for all of you and for your time and for being amazing professionals. You rock. Todd, thank you. Virtual high five. Mr. Data Man and Tori, great job. Thank you for helping us navigate. Have an awesome afternoon, everybody. We look forward to seeing you soon.